Good morning, YouTube. Today, I want to talk about preparing your car for a road trip.
So are you recording all of the nefarious activities?
If you're new to the channel, my name is Dan and this is my garage, and this channel is all about the supercar ownership experience, buying and selling them, maintaining them, DIY work on them. We do all sorts of interesting things on these cars, but more importantly, you can visit my website, normalguysupercar.com, and there I actually sell parts for supercars. But perhaps you don't have a supercar and, well, you're interested in doing a road trip. Well, don't worry, this video is going to be aimed at just about any car, really, or truck for that matter. I kind of want to give like a basic idea of things that you should probably do and check out, and things you want to bring on a road trip to make sure that you stay safe, your car is ready to go, and that you make it to your destination. So last year in my Ferrari 458, I drove it over 18,000 miles, and I took it on quite a few road trips. And this year, well, COVID happened. So unfortunately, I haven't driven it a whole lot. We've only driven it maybe a couple thousand miles, but we're going to change that. We've got a big road trip coming up. We're actually going to Colorado October 3rd through October 10th. And it's partly inspired by a few things. One, just need to get out. And two, actually Shell is sponsoring this video and they're doing the Great State Escape. So basically they're saying, hey, you know what? We know you can't really travel international right now. Flights are kind of a problem. Why not take a road trip? I know summer's kind of over, but it's not too late to do a road trip. It's still got some good fall colors coming up. Still got some good weather. For those of us in Texas, we're like, hey, we finally could go get some cool weather. So that's part of it, is we're going to drive up to Colorado, experience some cool weather, see the fall colors, see some awesome cool mountains and stuff, and just have a good time in our cars. And that's what it's all about. But there's a lot of things that you need to do before taking your car on a big road trip to make sure that you stay safe. Let's talk about what you should do and what you should prepare and what tools you should bring. So the most important thing to inspect and check out when you're about to go on a road trip is your tires and your brakes. So the tires are literally the only thing that's between your car and the road. Very important that your tires are in good condition, aired up properly, and have enough tread life. So I'm going to show you how to check all those things in just a moment. But then the other thing is, of course, your brakes. Obviously, if you can't stop, that's kind of a problem. Those two things, more than anything else, I mean, it's going to suck if your car breaks down on the side of the road. It's really going to be a bad day if you end up crashing. So the first thing we're going to do is check on the actual tire depth. And this is a tire depth gauge. It's very simple to use. You basically push it forward until this sticks out. And then it's actually a good idea to check the inner and outer tread depth and maybe even the middle as well. So check it in 3 spots. So we're going to basically stick this right into the tread of the car, onto the outer edge of it, and push down. And then from here, we can see what it actually says. So we're going to do it in 30 seconds since we're in the good old US of A. And basically it shows that we are at about 9:30 seconds. So that's pretty good. That's actually very good tread depth. So that makes me very happy. So let's check on the inner edge of the tire, because they don't always wear the same on the inner and outer sides. So we'll stick it way in here. My inner tread depth is at a little bit less than 8:30 seconds, almost to 7. So you can see my inner sides are wearing a little bit more than the outer, which is very typical on these Ferraris. They have the camber set so that the wheels are pushed in just a little bit. So you always expect the inside of the tire to wear more than the outside tire. But that is plenty of tread. You really want to make sure that you have at least about 4:30 seconds of tread just to be safe. The legal limit's 2, but I mean, I personally wouldn't go any less than 3, just because once it starts raining, you really actually want some tread to make sure that you're not going to hydroplane. So that is the first thing to check. And we also need to make sure we do it on all 4 tires. So don't just do one tire, do it on all 4 tires. So the next thing that we want to do is actually make sure that our tires aren't too old. So it's very important that old tires don't get driven. And I'm a big stickler on this. When tires get to be about 5 years old, the rubber starts to get really hard. I actually just recently had a tire blow out because it was too old. So we were driving on the road, everything was fine, and all of a sudden the tire just blew up. And that was because it was a 5-plus-year-old tire on my Subaru, and I should have known better and changed them out, but I didn't. Especially if you're going to be driving a lot of highway miles, that's where your chances of having something go wrong at higher speeds is more important. The way to check the year on the tire is actually, well, we're going to go upside down for a second here. So if you look right here, here is the dot code. See, it starts with DOT, and we got a bunch of other numbers. The last 4 numbers down here, you can see it says 0420. That means that this tire was made in the 4th week of 2020. We know that this tire is really new. This is less than a year old. So looking at my rear tire, you can see 38.19. So this was made in the 38th week of 2019. So this tire is actually about 1 year old, but that's still really, really good. So we're still doing very good on these tires. They are fairly new. So I just checked the rear tires on my car, and you can see it is at about almost a 5/32. So we're still well within the safe range. Probably this will be the last road trip that these tires are good for, and then we'll have to get new ones in the rear. Front tires are good to go for a little bit longer. And while we're checking the tires, the next thing we're gonna do is check the air pressure. So you can use one of these like cheesy little stick type tire pressure gauges. I don't think those are very accurate, so I don't really trust them. I try and get like an actual tire pressure gauge that has, you know, like a real gauge on it. You can pick these up on Amazon for really cheap. You don't have to go out and buy like $100 digital gauge or anything cool like that. So in order to check the tire pressure, well, on mine we actually have a little tool to loosen up the cap, because I've got these like little special caps you can't just take off with your hand. So get that on there just right. There we go. And keep in mind, the tire pressure is going to change whether or not the car is hot or cold, or the tires are hot or cold. And factor that in. If you're going to a colder climate, you might want to add a little bit more air. If you're going to a hotter climate, you might want to add a little bit less air. What we're going to do is, of course, make sure that we're at 0 and just push that in. And you can see this tire is actually really low. It's at 26.5. And I like to run my tires at about 30 to 32 PSI. And considering we'll be going to a colder climate, I'm gonna probably air them up to about 33. So let's actually put some air in these tires. All right, we've got my little air inflator, and we just stick it on there, let it go for a little bit, and then recheck. So we're at 31.5, just a little bit more. And you can see, actually, I overfilled it. It's at 35. So we'll let a little air. There we go, 33, right on the money. So if you aren't sure about how much pressure to put in your car, a lot of times inside the door, it'll actually say the recommended pressure for your car. That's assuming you have the stock tires. The other thing is to look on the tire itself, and it actually will typically say the maximum pressure. This says 50 PSI, which we don't want 50 PSI in this car. It'll make it feel like it's driving on a rock. So I'm gonna keep it around 33. I like it when it's hot to be about 35 to 37. When it starts cold at 33, it increases 3 to 4 PSI depending on how hot it gets. The other thing that you should do while you're here checking on the tires is make sure each of the sidewalls don't have any bubbles. So inspect the sidewalls, and if you see any bulges or anything like that, that tire is bad. Get rid of it immediately. You should also check the tread to make sure that there is no nails or debris stuck in the tread. That's a little bit trickier to do while the tire is in the car. What you can do is turn the steering wheel, or actually take the tire off if you really wanted to. So once you're confident that your tires are good, the next important thing is, of course, the brakes. What we're gonna do is we're gonna check the brake caliper to make sure that the brake pads have enough thickness on it, and then we're gonna check the brake fluid. Those are kind of the two most important things. You can actually check on the brake rotor thickness and kind of inspect to make sure it has no grooves or any damage to the rotors, but to check the thickness, you generally have to pull the tire off, the wheel and tire off. So unless you're doing that, you'll probably have to do it, but if you really want to be careful, that's a good idea to check that as well. So to check the actual brake pad thickness, I have a brake pad thickness gauge. All right, so the way it works is you have this little gauge, and you can see this thing sticks out and will clip up against the actual brake pad. So, whoop, on get the stick, and there we can see in millimeters, we are at about 7 millimeters. You have to know what is a good thickness on your brake pad to know whether or not that's good. On these, 7 millimeters is well within the thickness that is recommended from the factory, so mine are good to go. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna check the torque on all the wheel lugs. My car, the recommendation is about 90 foot-pounds. I do 100 foot-pounds. Get a torque wrench, get the right socket, check all your lugs. Good. So finally, on the brakes, we're gonna check the brake fluid. So we wanna make sure the brake fluid looks fairly clear, maybe slightly amber, but if it's a dark color or brown, it's gotta go. Realistically, brake fluid probably is only good for a few years until it soaks up a bunch of moisture. I change mine every year. Actually, I change mine every time I'm about to go to the track. So usually I get it changed 2 or 3 times a year. The recommendation when you're tracking a car is a lot more strict than when you're just driving on the road. If you really wanna be safe, I would say change it after every year, but certainly every 2 or 3 years at an absolute worst case scenario. Adam's here, and we're gonna change the brake fluid on his Porsche because, well, it's over a year.
Yeah, it is.
He's gonna be ready to rock and roll because he's actually coming on the trip. So if you want to meet Adam, you can meet him on the trip. Yeah.
I'll have better hair. I'll
on the trip, I promise.
Oh.
I didn't know I was going to be on camera today.
All right, let's look at your brake fluid. Probably doesn't look too bad. Oh yeah, you got a little thingy. You can see the casing. It looks pretty yellow. It's not very brown yet, but better safe than sorry. We're still gonna change it out. So basically we start off, close it, zero it out. All right, so we're zeroed out, and then we open it like this, and we put it on your rotor, actually clamped on metal spots, not in the holes, and then it should show us the number. So it's 27.74 millimeters. So then somewhere on the rotor itself should actually say how thick is the minimum thickness. It might be on the actual hub somewhere too, I'm not sure.
26.
26, there we go. So you have 1.75 millimeters left. You got plenty of life. So we're gonna remove all the brake fluid that's already in there. So we got the Motive pressure bleeder pushing brake fluid in, and he's got the bleeder cracked open. You can see the old brake fluid's actually pretty darn clean, so this is again out of an abundance of caution. So while Adam's continuing on with his brake fluid flush, we're gonna check on some other liquids in the system. So we're gonna check the oil. Well, I would check the oil on my car, but in order to check the oil on my car, you have to start up and get up to operating temperature. So we're not gonna do that yet because we wanna check the coolant first. So we're gonna check the coolant while the car's cold. Make sure it's got reasonable amount of coolant. If it's only a little bit low, you could add a little bit of water, distilled water. It has to be distilled water, not regular tap water. Do not add tap water. But if you need to add a lot, there might be a bigger issue going on, so theoretically you shouldn't have low coolant unless a leak is happening. If you have very low coolant, you might need to bring it in, check out, and see if there's something else wrong. So my coolant's just a little bit low. I'm gonna top it off with just a tiny bit of water. There you go, distilled water here. So another fluid you might not think about is actually washer fluid. So make sure that your washer fluid is topped off. Certainly when you're on these drives, the probability that you'll need some is very, very high. You're gonna get all sorts of bugs and dirt and nastiness.
Is that OEM washer fluid there?
No, this is not Ferrari washer fluid.
There it is. Enzo Ferrari is rolling in his grave right now.
This stuff's pretty low. I'm glad I checked it. Dang, this thing just took that whole bottle. Glad I added it. Next, we're actually gonna check on the lights. So we're gonna turn on the headlights and taillights and turn on the blinkers, make sure all of those work. All right, headlights on, blinker, side marker, blinker, headlight blinker, side marker, blinker, taillight blinker, taillight blinker. And now we just gotta check on the actual brake lights.
Yep, brake lights are good.
So next, you would want to check on the battery and make sure that your battery is not too old. Like once they start getting about 5 years old, it's too old. I just replaced this battery last year, so I know it's good. It's a lithium battery, so it's a little bit different. So normally to check on the battery life, you look on the top of the battery and they have the date marked on it somewhere. My battery doesn't have a date because it's a lithium ion, so it's totally different. Adam's battery doesn't have a date stamp on it either. So anyway, normally you want to check out the date. Along with having checked everything, you also want to bring some tools. So obviously you want to bring some basic wrenches and sockets. It's probably a good idea to bring like a torque wrench with a socket that's for your wheel lug size like Adam's doing right now. It's also a good idea to bring some tire pressure gauges. I would highly recommend some form of fire extinguisher to keep in your car, such as this Element fire extinguisher, which you can buy on my website, normalguysupercar.com. Use the code NGS10 and it knocks off 10%. So this is a tiny little fire extinguisher that's way better than these big, bulky, pressurized ones.
The paper burns quickly.
Wow. Also, it's a really good idea to bring some sort of OBD scanner. So you could bring a little thing like this, which does basic stuff, or you could bring a full-on OBD computer like this. I'm gonna bring both just so we have them. Also, don't forget to bring your smartphone charger, probably a spare quart or two of oil, an air pump, and a tire fix-a-flat kit. So one of those little jars that you can just spray into the tire. So the Ferrari actually has a little toolkit already here in the car, and we have an air pump with a fix-a-flat kit right there. So we've already got those in this car ready to roll. So once you've done all these things and made sure your car is good to go, take it out for a test drive. You want to drive at least 30-40 miles, make sure it's good, no check engine lights come on, that your tires are good, everything's running well. Also, don't wait till the last minute to do all this stuff because you might have a part that's broken or something that you need to order. So I'd recommend at least 2 weeks away, so at the minimum 1 week away. So like take the weekend before you're gonna go, set that aside decide, make sure that that's when you're gonna check out your car. But also, here's an important thing, is to plan your route. So I always make sure that I go through and I find the route on Google Maps. I check all the gas stations. So I search for Shell stations along my route and make sure that we got good gas stations, because I don't trust gas while I'm on the road. I don't want to stop at some gas station that I don't know what brand it is and I don't know what's gonna happen. So I try and plan all my fuel stops ahead of time. Now, obviously, sometimes that doesn't work out. Like, I've gone to stations and had them be closed. You can plan it out pretty good. So I actually go on Google Maps, beginning point, my destination, and then find stops along the way. Usually I try and target about 150, anywhere from between 150 to 250 miles, knowing that I want to pee after about every 2 to 3 hours, and just get out of the car and stretch. It makes it good timing to have a gas stop, get out, grab a snack, take a pee, possibly grab some food or whatever, just walk around, get out of the car. You can use the Shell app to actually find different Shell stations, and of course use the Fuel Rewards program to save 5 cents a gallon on every fill up. So those sorts of things all can help you make sure that you have a good, successful, and awesome road trip that's a lot of fun and no big hang-ups. So you guys have heard me talk about many times that I use the Shell V-Power Nitro Plus exclusively in my car. Basically, the data shows that it is really good stuff. So again, don't listen to my word, go research yourself, go look up the data, go find out information about this stuff. So the Shell products, the Shell oil, Pennzoil, which is made by Shell, it's been proven scientifically to be good stuff. So it helps keep your car running like new to use V-Power Nitro Plus, so you don't have to worry about, did I put in some garbage fuel? I've actually had check engine lights come on from bad fuel, so I'm a little bit weary of just filling up at random gas stations. So I search for Shell stations. I don't search for gas stations when I'm on the road. That helps make sure that I'm filling up with good stuff and I'm not gonna like get some crap and have my engine get damaged or get all clogged up with gunk and things like that. So I highly recommend that that's the way you plan a route. Beginning point, destination, find some stops in between, and then plot it all out and have it plugged into your smartphone, ready to rock and roll. That's what we're doing on our road trip. So I've already got over 20 Shell stations plotted along the entire course. Yeah, it's gonna be one heck of a journey. We're gonna be putting in 3,000 plus miles, so we're gonna burn through a whole lot of V-Power Nitro Plus. It's gonna be pretty awesome. But I hope you guys found this helpful and entertaining. So if you did, give me a thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe. Those things help out my channel. But you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for watching. We're gonna be doing a ton of car stuff. You're gonna wanna stay tuned.
It's gonna be sweet.
Like he said. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for the help.
No problem, Dan. I'm here for you.
Why aren't you done yet?
I'm on the last one.
Oh, okay.